I love this vibe, man. What's it called again, the restaurant?
Agricole.
And this is
Tea Agricole.
Tea Agricole.
I do play music here sometimes. And actually when we were making Everything Now, we were kind of setting up this bar. So I would actually play, like listen to rough mixes and stuff. You want a drink?
I'd love a drink.
All right.
Do you remember like the first time you ever went to Haiti?
Her family's Haitian, obviously, so it was like a very different angle on a Christmas party than the Christmas party that I grew up with. We definitely didn't learn about the Haitian Revolution in Texas. It kind of started through just getting to know Regine and her family. And then Regine had actually never been to Haiti. Both of her parents had to flee during Duvalier, and it was a pretty, well, we should have a drink first. Cheers.
Cheers. It sort of feels to me like location and environment has been a constant for you. You know, everyone was very aware that you were making your home Montreal in the beginning, and Montreal played a big role in that, and a lot of great art and great music, and your peers seem to be coming out at the same time. And then, you know, Haiti, of course, you know, we just discussed that, and then New Orleans plays a big role as well. And it just feels to me like territory and environment is important to you. You know, and some artists I talk to, it's like, well, we just make the record wherever's available, or we do whatever's available.
Yeah.
You seem to follow this lead to these places.
Montreal is a really diverse city. It's kind of like a mini New York. And when I moved here, the thing that I really immediately loved about Montreal is, you know, the neighborhood I was living in was a Hasidic neighborhood, and then there was this Greek and Portuguese, French African and Haitian, and like these really distinct. And even like the European immigrants in Montreal, like the Italians are super Italian. Like they're not like Canadian Italian. They're like Italian. And you go and watch the World Cup. There was an Italian coffee shop that was basically like the center of the Montreal music scene, where like everyone would go and write, and it was like really a profound. It was like a real scene, you know what I mean? It was like an actual music scene where it's like you would see people and have a coffee and play shows, and that kind of initial period in the early 2000s, I don't even think anyone thought that good music could come from Canada. It wasn't like Canada was synonymous with good rock bands or anything like that. And so there was this kind of movement kind of bubbling up. And I mean, the best I can tell, you know, like I've become friends with David Byrne over the years. He came to some of our first shows in New York, and just from hearing him talk about the scene in New York in the 70s, where you had like the Ramones and Blondie and the Talking Heads,
CBGBs.
The CBGBs sing, which you had these bands that were extremely different from each other, but all really great in their own right. If you're like watching the Ramones and you're the Talking Heads, you can't help but give it a little bit harder, because even though you're not trying to make the same kind of music as them, it just makes you better.
It just pushes you to play what you do better.
Yeah, and then
harder,
Patti
right?
Smith is playing, you know.
And that's why their pop music was so edgy and weird.
Yeah.
Because I think you're right, they were surrounded by much harder sound, and the Ramones were probably trying to make poppier sounding songs because they were watching people write these great pop songs.
Yeah, and I think that there's something that can't really be replaced online, because there's really a difference between hearing a record, hearing a sound online, and being in the room the week after someone wrote something great and hearing them play it, and you just have that feeling of, I've got to go back to work, you know, like I have a lot of work to do.
I think about when you first came out, and obviously Funeral has gone down as one of the great debut albums of the last 15, 20 years and set you on this wonderful path, but you know, when you first came out, all anyone would talk about was Arcade Fire Live. Like, you've got to see Arcade Fire Live. You know, that spirit and that fire in you. It was like you came out and you already had it. It wasn't like you had to grow into it. And I'm sure that feels different now compared to the show the other night. But it just felt like you were completely ready to go.
Well, we were 24, we weren't 17, and by the time we put out Funeral, we really knew what we were doing. Like, we'd played a lot. We weren't, like, it was really rough around the edges. And that's one of the things I'm really grateful about, not having been in a band in New York or London, where it's like you do something kind of good and then people are like, oh, you're amazing. And you kind of get this positive, kind of false positive feedback. By the time we started getting positive feedback on Funeral, we'd already been torn down so many times before that, with like playing Wake Up for the first time and having all of our fans hate it, and playing Rebellion for the first time and having all of our fans hate it. Like, out of the gate, we went through that so much that we kind of knew on a really deep level that positive or negative, it's kind of just wind, you know what I mean? And I think that we've always just put our energy into making the and playing and putting our heart into the music. And for pretty much every record, and when you're in a band, you could kind of write on a napkin what the critical response is going to be. You know what I mean? Like, it's like the reviews of Neon Bible. Like, I remember reading a review of just like lamenting that My Body's a Cage was on there. Like, what a downer, like what a bad song. And like, you're writing this music, you're like, I know this is one of the best songs you've ever written. Like, I know in my heart, like this is one of the only songs you could go into a church and someone would sing it and at like someone's actual funeral and would actually be meaningful. But just to like, you just read this dismissive stuff of something that you know is really good. And so it just, you just know.
But you've always been that band, you know, and I think the reason why you're one of those bands, one of those artists, is because you make a record, people fall in love with it, they become attached to it, and then you go, cool, we've done that, we're going to go over here. And by the time everyone's worked out that Neon Bible is this amazing body of work, you're like, cool, we're going to go over here. And I just think that that's part and parcel with the relationship between not just fans and you, but also people who write about music for a living, or whose job it is to critique, and everyone needs, and I just think that that's kind of part and parcel. But one of the things that when you first came out, that was really fascinating was you were very embraced early on by people like David Byrne and David Bowie as well. And I mean, before you guys even really had cracked the world stage, they were coming to your shows, they were championing you, and there's stories of David Bowie buying up every copy of Funeral he could. Just
I mean, that was actually kind of crazy. I mean, on that first record, we, Bruce Springsteen covered our song, and we like played with David Byrne and David Bowie, and played with U2 at the end of the Funeral tour.
They were starting their concerts in stadiums with Wake Up.
Yes, it was pretty crazy.
So what do you think from that relationship, especially poignant now given that he's no longer with us, in life? What is one of those kind of really profound takeaways that you got from your relationship with him? What do you carry with you into the future with Arcade Fire that you feel he really gave you?
Just total fearlessness and hunger, and he was someone that was so interested in music and so searching after new music and new sounds, and a really early champion of hip hop, a really early champion of punk rock. Like, I feel like he was one of the few kind of like classic rock people that didn't get just blown away in the storm of punk rock. The thing that I learned from David was just this kind of restlessness, which can sometimes make the people around you feel crazy, but it's also just kind of an innate thing,
I think it's really cool what you said the other night on stage about him as well, where you sort of said, this is our kind of version of Oh You Pretty Things, is it the suburbs? And it's like, when you acknowledge the influence like that even, it's a nice moment.
I mean, that is what music is.
It is.
We played with the Pixies the other day, who I remember the first time I heard the Pixies, I was in boarding school, and my best friend from boarding school had graduated, and he picked me up in his car, and we drove off campus, which for me was just like freedom for like 1 minute. And he was like, oh, there's this band called the Pixies, and he played me Surfer Rosa. And it was just like the combination of the band name and the way the music sounded. It was like, how is this band called the Pixies, and how does it sound like this? And I was watching them the other night, and they have a song that's essentially the complete template for Nirvana. It's like it's exactly Smells Like Teen Spirit. And which Nirvana completely acknowledged, and yet the Nirvana version is completely different. It's the same song with the same dynamics, with the same guitar fuzz and the same chords, and a different singer singing about something different.
Totally.
And with a different like spiritual angle, and it's perfect. And it's like that's exactly the essence of what music is. It's basically imitation, humans doing imitation, and the kind of human residue of the particular person saying what they have to say is what makes it art, or what makes it unique. When people try to describe music, a lot of times it's just talking about how things sound like things. But it's just always been funny to me, because it's kind of like describing breathing. It's like,
why wouldn't it happen that way?
That's what it is. That's the essential nature of what music is. It's like a language that's passed down from humans to humans based on things that they've heard.
So where do we find you with everything now then? Where do we find the inspiration coming from, musically at least to start with, on everything now? I mean, people talk about ABBA. I think in the title track, certainly there's a sense of like freedom, and there's a disco beat, and it's got the same kind of very sort of driving melodic feeling that ABBA drives, very unashamed pop feeling to it.
Yeah, I mean, ABBA has always been, I mean, like Sprawl 2, Tunnels is kind of us trying to do ABBA. Yeah, it's definitely an influence. I would say like New Order, Pixies, Neil Young, ABBA, like they're all pretty like essential influences from the get-go.
Before the album came out a couple of months ago, you released a song called I Give You Power, right?
Yeah.
With Mavis Staples.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, a lot of people absolutely loved because it was just a very kind of raw, electronic, and the lyric was very personal and intimate, and you know, and I think a lot of people sort of felt like at that time that maybe the next album would be that. That it would be a direct reflection of the political times that we live in right now, and the unrest. And the album is not that thematically. Was it at ever point going to be that, or were you?
Well, no, I mean, that song isn't about Donald Trump. It just, the political context gave the song that meaning.
Right.
Because it was a song that was written way before.
But the timing of the release was pretty.
Well,
on the
no,
nose.
it felt like that was the time.
Yeah.
That was like the best time for people to be able to hear that song, because it was sort of about not feeling powerless in the face of power. And that
Which
was
is how a lot of people felt.
Yeah, and it's like, to be honest, like
Feel.
one of the low points of American history since I've been alive. It's like a real low point. You know, it's like 9/11 and Trump being elected. I mean, it's like pretty low point. I mean, that's part of why we did the album art in Death Valley in the U.S. It's like the lowest point in America, like literally, like that was the symbology behind it. You know, it's like trying to like make something from this valley, you know.
Yeah, but it's funny because you offset that with a kind of lack of earnestness. You know, like the last time I think we saw somebody go out to the valley and try and capture that in an iconic way, it was the most earnest album cover in modern history, right? It was Joshua Tree. It's like these guys just like, you know, and they just had to rebel against that dramatically after that fact. You guys went out there this time, it's like you learned that lesson, and we're like, all right, we're going to go to Death Valley, that's what that means, but we're going to go out in satin jackets, and we're going to look fantastic, you know? And it's just interesting, and that kind of, to me, is thematically, at least, a little bit of the, you know, the contradiction seems to be very present, you know? I have this to say, but I'm going to say it over a very funky, happy kind of beat in some degree.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I think we're still working out what it all means, because what it means is changing so fast. I mean, like even a song like Wake Up feels like it has a political context when I sing it now.
Definitely in the room.
Well, it's never felt like a political song to me until recently, you know? I mean, I saw Radiohead last year in New Orleans, and they did No Surprises, which is kind of like the pop song on OK
The
Computer.
lullaby, yeah.
Yeah, like the kind of lullaby pop song, and it gets to there's a line,
The government.
bring down the government, they don't speak for us,
Yeah.
and the whole arena just went, like it was like the biggest crowd response
Yeah.
to this like pop song, and the original context is completely unimportant, you know, because it's like speaking.
It changes shape with the time.
Which is what records do
They do.
and music does, you know. I mean, it's like, yeah, I just always, with our music, I'm just like dreaming of when it's all over and you just have your catalog and it's just a bunch of kids and their older siblings just randomly discovering the music.
You see that to me when we spoke about Neon Bible.
I'm still like, please let that time come where it's just like all the context and all the, because it's all such wind, you know. It's like basically there's a whole kind of machine around music that kind of masks its true power, and I think that a lot of times only time can free it from that context so that it can just be what it's supposed to be.
With that in mind, you know, I would imagine that you'd be tempted, or you would choose a path to release records now that's more just let it exist and let everyone just kind of consume it, absorb it, decipher it, and judge it in their own terms. But in this particular case, you know, you've really come out, and I think you've turned on the wind machine. It's like you've immersed yourself into it and gone, okay, we're going to be playful with this. We're going to create a lot of like diversionary tactics, fake media. Are we trying to trick the media here into thinking some of these things are real? Are we not? I mean, it's dicey ground.
Completely, and it's really kind of an experiment, like kind of an art experiment. And we did it kind of full well knowing that every review of the record would be talking about the promotional campaign instead of the music, you know, which to me is kind of exactly the point.
Why? Why sacrifice the album like that?
It's not a sacrifice because no one, like, ultimately people have ears and people are sheep to a certain extent, but people do have ears.
Yeah, of course.
So it's like you can like read that something means something all you want and then you hear it for yourself. And to me, part of what we're after is exactly that. It's like for people to kind of maybe question what they read a little bit and just question it.
Is that what, okay, so that's interesting you say that, because is that kind of to a certain degree the point? And maybe I missed that initially when I was thinking you guys were just kind of having fun at our expense, and I'm all for that. I think that being in the music media, you have to be able to take a look at yourself and wonder whether or not your opinion actually matters. But
what we're doing has nothing to do with the music media. The music media is just like around every...
We have to pick the stories up.
I know, but around the record, there is that noise anyway. Like no matter what you do, like the noise and the whirlwind of garbage and that is just inherent. That is what it is, you know? So I think that we're putting some chaos into that.
And encouraging us to read the truth. And
Not.
it's
It's really not in a malicious way. It's genuinely in a fun, like, this is the first time we've ever hired actual like journalists to write pieces. Like, not everyone agrees. Like, not everyone maybe thinks it's funny, but I think it's really funny. And like, I know people that do think it's funny. So it's like, I think if you kind of look at it in its totality when it's all over, like a year from now, and you have like a magazine with all the stuff we actually created for this campaign, it's going to be a pretty good read. It's really interesting. Like every piece of negative criticism I read of the record, like mentions that I rap on a song, which is just
signs of life.
Yeah, which is just not true. Like, I mean, unless people don't know what rapping is, unless like Bob Dylan raps,
right?
There's no rap. No, like I do not rap on an Arcade Fire song. It's not a thing that happens.
Right.
But it's just kind of like a phrase that's been like copy pasted from one initial thing from like 6 months ago. And I just have it's just kind of the nature of how this stuff works. So it's been really interesting just to see like this becomes the truth, like this kind of pseudo fact becomes just
because
kind of a common knowledge.
Copy, cut, paste.
When anyone who knows what rapping is knows that like me saying the days of the week is not rapping. That's not a rap. Like it's not what rap is.
Right.
But if you repeat it enough, then it's true. The first piece of fake news was 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
So it's like the time that we're in, 2
like
weeks,
lifetime.
2 weeks seems like 1,000 years.
Yeah, it does.
Because it's the way the kind of fractured light of when it hits the kind of broken mirror and goes everywhere, and then you hear things from 1,000 different angles, which is kind of like the concept of everything nowness. Like that is what it is to me. It's like, I read a really amazing book called The Image. It's from 1961, and it's kind of talking about the idea of public relations, where it's like 90% of what we're ingesting are pseudo events. You know, it's like someone says Barack Obama is a radical terrorist, which is not true, but saying it creates a false event. So then when Barack Obama comes out and says, hey guys, I'm definitely not a terrorist, and why are we talking about this? This is beneath us as a people to talk about this. Instead of it making the original idea recede, it's just another link in the chain.
Yeah.
And then ultimately, the people who believe it, and the people who don't believe it. And then we all kind of get a hit of, I mean, because essentially a lot of the internet is like, essentially like boredom, and it's like what we do with our boredom and our loneliness.
Yeah, it's a distraction.
Yeah, it's like, how do I fill my time? And you kind of get an emotional hit. It's kind of the same reason why people are into kitten videos. Like a lot of the original YouTube is like people looking at cute animals, because you kind of get an emotional hit from seeing a cute animal. Like just gives you a little like, oh, animals are cute. It's like an emotional response. So it's like people like to be outraged. People like just that feeling, like a little bit of a buzz, you know? Because it's like
it's vicarious. So the concept of being human is vicarious in its very nature, right?
Exactly, yeah.
And
so people want to share that feeling of like, oh, I'm mad at that. I didn't like this. I don't like this.
Let's talk about the music on the record and some of the songs in particular.
20 minutes in to talk about the music?
I know.
Come on, man.
Straight in there, man.
You gotta get in there.
I know. Creature.
Oh, I forgot. I'm promoting an album.
No, the album's already out. The album's already out. It's gone.
Oh yeah.
You know how it works nowadays,
Yeah.
man. You have a 3-hour window to be excited about your record.
Should we talk about the reissue?
And it's done. When's that coming out? Tomorrow?
10 years from now, we have some really exciting bonus tracks. It's all pretty much just a setup for the reissue.
You know, Tim described this record on social media today, Tim and your band, as an odyssey. What do you think he means? The making of it.
That it took us a couple years, and like, it was like the band flying to New Orleans for 2 or 3 week chunks for over a year. Like,
does everyone like going there? I know you guys do. Does everyone in the band like going to New Orleans to do that, or is some people just like, I get we have to, but I'd rather not spend half my month in New Orleans every month?
I mean, I think there's a lot of sacrifice involved in being in a band just from a familial standpoint, because it's a really great job in that you end up having like a year where you're really not working, and then a year where your life is crazy. So it's like, I think in the balance, I mean, we're one of the few bands that actually can make a career from, like, the times when you could sell 10,000 records and quit your day job have been completely absorbed into the digital ether. It's not even a way of life anymore, which that was the way of life. Like, our dream as a band was to sell 10,000 records and quit our day job. And we sold 10,000 records at Funeral in the first week. And we're like, oh, we have a real job, you know? But the real dream was to quit our day job. And I think that like, for the top 1% that are benefiting from streaming, it's all gravy, you know? But I think that the bands from which our bands sprang are kind of screwed, you know? And I don't know what the exact answer is. There's opportunities to license your music to commercials and stuff like that, but that's a really different
Proposition of what it was.
It's a different proposition, and the type of music that appeals to like a Jeep commercial is not necessarily the type of music.
Well, that was always supposed to be a choice.
That makes someone want to quit their job and like get in a van and drive around singing your heart out, and until you physically collapse for years on end. You know what I mean? It's not the same sort of thing as like, I'm gonna make something that makes people really want to hop in a Jeep. You know, it's like not the same inspiration. You know.
Yeah.
Ideally, when they both work, it's amazing.
So you're in New Orleans in a small room, and I mean, this room is really small. You've tried to describe it to me before, but it is like, I mean, if we're talking from the bar to the speakers, what are we talking about?
Yeah,
I mean, it's
probably about as wide as the speakers and to here.
Wow, that's tiny. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of, I suppose, to some degree influencing the way you're doing the stage setup, which is very tight right now.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, when people are tight energy, it's like an energetic thing. It's like you're bumping into people, and it's a physical energy.
Well, it's fun, and that's something I got from the performance the other night. You know, I remember seeing you headline Glastonbury, and I watched it on Tally, and that's a relatively small main stage, Glastonbury, in terms of actually the length of it. There's a lot bigger ones, Reading, Leeds, things like that. But it just felt like, wow, you know, okay, Jeremy's up here, and Wynn's there, and Regine is there, and Sarah and Richie are here, and it's like okay, well, where's the tactility? Where's that just bouncing off people thing? And I guess in some respects you miss that, because what you've got now is you have made it the smallest it's ever been.
Right. Yeah.
20 feet.
Yeah, I mean,
Was it almost getting too big? Did it almost feel like, wow, in growing this band and becoming this band and reaching more people, we're sort of forgetting where it began, which was this just bouncing off each other and this
friction.
I
mean, there's different contexts for different things, so it's like sometimes it is. I mean, who gets to headline Glastonbury in their life?
No disrespect, it's the greatest festival in the world, but I mean, it's just, how do you present yourselves in that environment and retain what you originally were,
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you have to. I think you can just I think that we all just do the best that we can in the moment that we're trying to do it. And as long as you're present, and not every single thing you ever do is gonna be transcendent and beautiful and make people cry, and not every audience is going to be into it, and that's okay. You know what I mean? I mean, I think that we kind of go into every show with the mentality that we're going to war, and it's like we want everyone in the back of the room to put down whatever they're doing and connect to the songs, and that's kind of always been our mentality. But it doesn't always work out that way, And it's like. It would be weird if it did,
I'd like to talk to you about the people you teamed up with on this record. because you've worked with producers traditionally before, from Marcus Drabs right through to obviously James Murphy on Reflector.
Yeah.
And this time, you open the door to three very distinctive individuals. You had Tomas from Daft Punk, Steve Mackey, who you have a more long-term creative relationship with, and Jeff Barrow, who I don't think you've worked with before.
I actually wrote to him about the idea of mixing, and he was like, I'm not a mixer, but Craig Silvey, who mixes our albums, you should work with him. And so Craig mixed The Suburbs, and he mixed this last record and part of Reflector. And we never really had the opportunity to work with Jeff, but he's been a friend for a long time, and it was kind of an excuse for him to come with Craig, so Craig could hear some of the music as it was developing way before he mixed it.
So where's Jeff's influence on the record predominantly? Like what?
He worked on Creature Comfort a bunch, because it was also really different for us. Like Creature Comfort is stylistically, it's like there's aspects of Queen and dance hall and like punk. It's like really like a grab bag of influences. So he kind of helped us just break through and figure out what the song was.
Working with Tomas from Daft Punk, obviously notoriously secretive when it comes to their own music, and the way they present themselves, very detail-orientated, very deliberate. But when collaborating with other people like yourselves, what kind of environment is that, and what's he like to work with?
He's just a great friend, and he has extremely good taste in music, and philosophically, we were able to talk about the themes of, just like working on everything now, and melodically, just like kind of even just talking about the music and helping us work out exactly what we wanted to achieve. Yeah, I still remember just like sending him the link to the record a month ago, and he's like, this is a classic record, which I really profoundly trust Tomas' opinion. Like doesn't say things lightly. Like everything he says is so nuanced and so philosophical, and I just really trust his opinion on music.
Yeah. There are some songs that are really connecting already. Creature Comfort's being one of them.
Yeah.
People are really responding to that song.
Yeah.
It's really on my mind and on a lot of people's minds at the moment, the subject of mental health. I think it's now finally starting to become less of a taboo subject. People are openly talking about it.
Yeah.
But we're too late in some respects. We're losing amazing artists and amazing people who we don't even know, who aren't even in the artistic community, people who it's too much.
Yeah.
That song in particular seems to deal it's a very direct lyric. It's a story, obviously. Is it, without giving away any identity, is it a true story? Is it based on something that, you heard or someone you know?
Yeah, I think I haven't actually met too many front people that haven't struggled with depression, to be honest. Like, I know I have. I think that there's something actually chemical. I was watching a thing recently, just like a science piece about stress. And standing in front of a bunch of people is actually one of the most stressful things that you can do as a person.
Yet some of the most vulnerable people in the world choose to do it.
Yeah, but there's just kind of a really innate thing, and so I think your body puts out a lot of chemicals just naturally when you get on a stage to kind of, and so like Bruce Springsteen just put out a book talking very candidly about his depression, and like a lot of people that you wouldn't think would be depressed. I know I've been through it, and I think if you combine drugs into that scenario, then it can get really dark really fast.
Has there ever been a point whilst we've been aware of the band that's gone on? Was there a time when Arcade Fire were perhaps in the eyes of everybody else riding an amazing wave and everything is beautiful, that you were really feeling at your loneliest or at your most desperate?
I was really depressed in high school, and then I think a lot of people that gravitated to listening to The Cure were depressed. I found it really rewarding. Yeah.
I love that
yeah.
It felt good to me. The Smiths to me used to make me feel happy.
The Smiths still make me. I think Morrissey is such a misunderstood lyricist. I think he's the funniest.
So funny.
Like, please let me get what I want. Just makes me laugh every time. And I think people take it as this very self-serious thing.
I think that about you.
Yeah.
I wonder if you sometimes feel that people miss the humor.
I think the thing with me is that a lot of times when I'm writing about myself, people think I'm writing about someone else.
That's interesting. So they think that you're constantly judging or observing from a distance.
Yeah, even a song like Signs of Life is completely about myself. And one of the limitations of songwriting is that it's kind of like it's like the first person versus the third person. And I think for storytelling, I mean, you make a lot of these decisions based on language and sound, because ultimately, I mean, you could write a really scathing review of like Obla D and be like, what is this song about? These
Sounds
stupid
great,
sounds. It's
though.
like, I don't care. I love Obla D.
Great, exactly.
You know, like,
yeah.
you know, like when I watched Paul McCartney for the first time, the song I was most jealous of in his entire Beatles catalog was Obla D.
Have you ever told that to him?
No, but just like to have a song
Yeah.
that you could have just like 100,000 people sing along, and it's just like Obla Di, Obla Da, life goes on. It's like, wow, like I will never be able to write that song, but if I could, then I'd be happy.
I spent 3 days trying to learn Blackbird once, right?
Yeah.
Because I knew I was going to sit opposite Paul.
Yeah.
And I'd met him a few times, so I knew I could like
You
play
think
it for him.
you think he would like that?
Oh wait,
I
it
think
gets
he would
worse.
hate that.
It gets worse.
I think he would really hate that. Wait,
You
you
have no
thought he would
idea.
know what's gonna make him really comfortable? I'm gonna play Blackbird.
I mean, to be fair, it was Gonzo, so there was
Yeah.
a certain tongue-in-cheek element to the
Yeah.
whole thing anyway.
I don't know what's gonna make Paul McCartney feel really at ease.
Well, I don't know if you know this about Paul, but he always,
the guitar.
I don't know if you know this about Paul, but he
How about
always,
you take a selfie while you're playing?
let me show you.
Yeah.
Did it like passable impression. I thought I at least had the chords, and he just sat there and he went, dun, dun, and he sat and he went, totally, completely, absolutely wrong. Every part of it. He was just like so pissed off that I even tried to botch his song.
Well, next time, just run that kind of stuff. If you need some like artist relations advice, just run it
Run it
by me.
past
I'll
you?
let you know. Yeah. Like,
I was
good
gonna
idea.
bring a guitar out midway through this interview and have a crack at Suburbs, but maybe I'll pass on that.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think it's fascinating to me that people, and I don't know if they pick up on it or not, but it doesn't often get written about, it doesn't often get acknowledged, is that there are always songs on your records that are very deeply personal. And on this particular album, there's a few that really, really get to, you know, the heart of the record, you know, being in relationships in particular. You know, I think Regine's performance on Electric Blue is incredible, and it's such a sad song.
Yeah.
I mean, for such a positive, uplifting groove, it's
Yeah.
sad.
Yeah.
You know, and We Don't Deserve Love, and even Put Your Money on Me, which
Yeah.
is almost like a selfish suggestion, you know,
Yeah.
like, let me save this, you know,
Yeah.
like, what, you know,
Yeah.
who are you? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I think it's really interesting, and you know, and I wondered, like, being in a band, and you have your brother in the band, you have your friends in the band, but you also have a wife in the band, and how challenging that can be at times, and what that means to your writing process, because it's so close to home all the time.
I think it's our great strength. Like when the first lineup of Arcade Fire kind of broke up, and Regine and I were trying to figure out what to do, and I remember Richie at that time, because Richie had been playing with us and had produced the first EP, and he was like encouraging Regine and I to be a two-piece, like pretty strongly, just because we had we would play sometimes, she would play drums and I would play, and it was kind of just before the White Stripes kind of thing, it was like around that time. But it just didn't really fit at all with the sounds of music that I wanted to make. And so when I met Richie and Tim, and I was just thinking, like, who are the best people and the best musicians that I know? And it was Richie and Tim and my brother, and like I got him to like drop out of school for a semester and move to Montreal, and with Regine, and we didn't have a drummer. But it was like, who are like the best people and the best musicians I know, and like that's who I want to throw in my lot with, you know. And
There's no guarantees when you do that. That sure, you can get a band that plays well together, but then you've got to go on this road that can last 20, 30, 40 years if you're lucky.
yeah, but I mean, I think if everyone in your band is better than you at something, you're probably on the right path, you know. Like everyone should be smarter than you and better than you and kind of selfless to a certain degree.
Is it hard keeping it together though? 6 people in the band?
Oh yeah, super hard. I mean, yeah, the whole like creative struggle and just like trusting things, and even when they're not there yet, and trying to push through bad communication. And I mean, that's why we're one of the few bands that started when we started that's still like a real band, you know, that's kind of stuck together. And I'm really proud of that, you know. I mean, and it hasn't come at a small price. It's been really, you know, it's a lot. It like kind of takes over your whole life.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you think there's an unspoken conversation, or spoken, before every record, knowing what you're going to have to go through in the environment you put yourselves in to make these records, that sort of says to each other, you know, are we all in this? Are we all ready for another round? You know, because I think we all assume as fans, great, here come another 5 Arcade Fire albums over the
Yeah.
next 10, 15 years. You
Yeah.
know, but
it's been worth it. I wouldn't really have done anything differently. I have no regrets to this point at all. If we broke up tomorrow, I would feel extremely proud of what we had done. If we do it for another 30 years, I know that we'll make some amazing stuff. Not all of our music is singing to people who have traditionally liked Arcade Fire albums.
Well, clearly, because otherwise we wouldn't have got Chemistry, right? Which is the one that's most divisive song on the record.
Yeah,
definitely.
exactly. Like if you're like,
And yet it's one you're playing live straight away, so it's like, no, we're double down on this.
dude,
like,
when we played the whole record in New Orleans around Halloween, like a secret show that was only new material, just for a bunch of random people in New Orleans, and Chemistry was by far the biggest song when we played in New Orleans. Like not even close. Like nothing. Everything now was like pretty weak. So it's like we're going to play in Colombia. We're going to play in Mexico City. Like, do you think people in Mexico City have the same taste as like indie rock kids in Brooklyn? Like, nope. Like it's not. You know, it's like we're not just like we're not from Brooklyn.
yeah.
You know, that's not where we're from. We're not from like 2017 Brooklyn. Like we're from Montreal and we live in New Orleans, and our influences are really pretty deep. And the thing about music is it's like what you like is completely taste, you know? It's like, what is your taste in music? What do you want to listen to? Maybe our tastes have diverged from a certain, I mean, which they have on every album. So it's just like so par for the course for me that I'm just like,
Yeah, every album's been totally different to the last.
it's just totally different. And
Completely.
We're very much an international band at this point, and we're trying to do things we've never done, which is sometimes scary. But I think we probably would break up the band if we weren't gonna
Try those things.
to do things, yeah.
For all of the music and what it represents to listen to, thematically, again, there's some really sad moments and there's some really honest moments, and you know, Peter Pan, a song like that, and I think about you now and I think, okay, you're a father, you're at this point in your life heading into your mid-30s, you know, and you're in a very successful band and you're set, and you've been able to get real estate and land, and it's really worked out for you, but it doesn't change the nature of the world that you're in and how you feel about it. And you know, I feel like you've been on this journey the whole time as a writer, probably as a person, and I wonder where you want to end up and what it means for you as a dad and as a family man. And
Well, I mean, I wrote Peter Pan basically, I found out my dad was sick, and I woke up in the middle of the night and wrote that song. Every lyric in it, you know, it's like, yeah, it's a kind of a light song, but at the heart of it, it's like definitely not super light.
yeah.
First, it's like, in my dreams you're dying, it wakes me up, I can't stop crying. I just want to live forever, keep my promises, keep it together, you know.
And that all came out of how you were feeling on the subconscious level, from somewhere deep. It just flowed out.
Yeah, from the feeling of like, you kind of get to a certain age and you start losing parents and yeah, it's like not all fun and games, you know what I mean? It's like there's a lot of,
playtime's over.
We're all really looking for love and looking for connection and yeah, it's like a lifelong search, you know.
It brings me to, I mean, kind of officially the last song on the record. I mean, I know we go into everything now as a kind of continuation, but We Don't Deserve Love, which is one of my, and I told this to you the first time I heard that record when you came and played it.
Yeah.
I said, that's one of my favorite things you've ever done.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about that song? What is that song about to you?
There's kind of this period where like the Baptists were in Jamaica, and there's like this kind of strange connection between country music and dance hall and Jamaican and like rock steady and stuff like that, some of the offbeat. So it's like almost like this going back to the weird intersection of country and reggae that became something else. But no, it's a real.
It's a sad song.
It's a heartbreaker, yeah.
It's a really sad song. You know that lyric in there where it's like, your mother says we don't deserve. That's just like just a game. That's like a game changer lyric. Like that's when you hear that, it really cuts through.
My general philosophy on parenting, I only have one child, but my general philosophy is that you can't really make your kids smarter, but you can definitely f them up. And so you
so the motto is don't Up your kids?
No, it's just like you don't worry about making them smarter
Yeah.
because they're already as smart as they're going to be, but try to mitigate the amount that you them up because you can really them up, you know? So it's like,
Right.
you're just like, which essentially is just a question of love and listening and everything. But yeah, no, it's a heavy one. I think it's really important, like you were saying before, just with the kind of like recent suicides of singers and stuff like that. I mean, it's just really important to have people you can talk to, you know, because everyone like goes through highs and lows, you know what I mean? And sometimes the happiest people have the heaviest low, you know, and you don't really know when it's going to come. So yeah, it's good to have real friends.
You know, when I think of a song like "Put Your Money on Me," and I think like, wow, that's a smash. Like it's a pop song. Like,
I personally think it's like one of the best songs you ever made from a songwriting perspective.
Yeah.
I'm like extremely proud of that song.
It just made me think like, wow, you've achieved all of this, and you've got to this place where you're headlining Glastonbury, and you know, you're able to tour the world, and like you're saying, international waters, and people really anticipate your albums and love your band, and yet, I don't know, man, like radio has never been that factored in that heavily for you.
Yeah.
And yet, I can imagine you growing up being really influenced by the radio from when I hear your music and your songwriting, and I wonder how you feel about that, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I only heard music from the radio, and I don't really even know what the radio is anymore. I mean, I guess...
There's that lyric, right, in We Don't Deserve Love, where there's a terrible song on the radio, what's new?
Well, yeah, it's like in the romantic version of the country song, it's like you turn on the radio and listen, and just the singer's just saying exactly what you're thinking.
Yeah.
And you like
Kenny
have
Rogers,
you have
man.
your
It's
drink at
just-
the bar and Kenny Rogers is singing, and you're just like,
crushing it.
it's like, preach, you know?
Yeah.
But
Now you turn
turn on
it
the
on.
song, you're like, go ahead and turn it off. Like, this is like,
Yeah. Talking to you today, just talking about life in and amongst music and the themes of the record and stuff. You seem, you know, very happy, and the band seem happier than you've ever been, I think, and more comfortable than ever. Yet you're still writing these you know, long form bodies of work that really sort of point out where the inconsistencies are and where the challenges for us are and how you feel disconnected. And there's been a theme through all your records, from Funeral. You know, here are these individuals, yourself, perhaps other people who are struggling to get out. Then, you know, Neon Bible, okay, we're going to absorb this in a more particular way. And we come back to Suburbs, okay, maybe we go back to the Suburbs, maybe we see what this has to offer. You know, Reflector was its own beast, and then you come back around here and it's like, who are we now? And I just wonder, you know, if it's been the same kind of search all the way through your albums. I see a consistency.
yeah, I mean, I agree. There's a couple songs on the first EP that talk about the suburbs.
Why? Why is it so prevalent for you? Like, why is it such an important theme for you? What?
I just think you take what you're alienated by or what you struggle with and you try to make it into art, you know? And so, I mean, I remember, you know, like reading about the kind of the Clash, and there was this kind of fake kind of controversy about how Joe Strummer was actually, his parents had money. You know,
And that was a huge thing.
It was a huge thing. It was like, oh, he's in a punk band, but his
can't
parents
speak like
have
that,
money.
yeah.
Like, how can you even say anything?
Yeah, he doesn't represent the working class or the
Yeah.
socialist.
So for me, it was like, I'm from suburban Houston, and that is my experience. So I'm gonna like talk about what I know.
Where would you ultimately like to rest? Like, where would you like to end up? Where does the world make sense to you? If it's not, you know, in a cosmopolitan environment surrounded by huge big screens that are pumping information left, right, and center, and yes, you consume, but not to that degree. You don't want to get lost in it. You know, you have a family around you, and you have the freedom to be able to pick and choose where this goes in the future. And have you thought about where it ends up?
I mean, my greatest influence, my greatest hero is my grandfather Alvino, who, you know, played with Louis Armstrong and Duke Ellington, and halfway through his career volunteered to fight in World War II, came back, had a second career, like had a TV show with his whole family, invented the electric guitar, played on Blue Hawaii with Elvis, was like friends with Elvis, and ended up in the suburbs of Utah with his grandkids, and passed away at 96 with a Pro Tools session open in his basement, like recording himself in the basement, and he had like a Palm Pilot and was like just so illuminating to talk to, and so like he got to jam with Regine, like play jazz standards with Regine, played like Django Reinhardt, practiced his like Django Reinhardt scales every day till he was 96, and then worked on his ham radio and lived through the stock market crash, like lived next to the Empire State Building while it was being built, you know, and when he died, he really didn't have anything except a minivan, and he hid a bunch of gold coins around his house and left a treasure map for my mom and her brothers to find the gold coins, which is like maybe $5,000 worth of gold coins they had hidden. And yeah, he did it pretty right on, you know. And there's pretty much not a day, like any time we're on tour and I'll have a martini anywhere in the world, like we do a cheers to Alvino, you know. So that's kind of, sorry.
No, it's amazing. I think that you know, if that's the inspiration and that's the life, and it's an incredible life. It's a
really it's a good life, you know.
Yeah. Lovely talking with you.
So yeah,
yeah, shall we?
To Alvino.
To Alvino.
Yeah.
Good health. To Alvino.
Love and respect.